Detour by Dottie Childers Gravely, Chapter 6. A little longer on the detour route. Finally, that day arrived for me. The day to move on to the rehabilitation unit, Spain Rehab. My unused muscles seemed to have forgotten how to take commands from my injured brain, if it could still give those commands. In rehab, I think I must have had the two finest therapists in the state of Alabama. There are 2 hours of therapy in the morning, one of OT and one of PT, and a 1 hour session in the afternoon with half hour of each. If my two therapists took a day off or had a meeting to attend, they made sure that a substitute continued my exercises. One therapist that I got to know slightly shared with me that her mother had survived a deadly attack of cancer, pancreatic, I believe. Her mother stood on a promise she felt God had given her. She is fine today. While Joel was there, I transitioned to rehab. I showed him the beautiful crepe myrtle blossoms at the tops of the tall branches just below my third floor window. He saw how much I enjoyed them and ordered a bouquet of flowers for me. It's amazing how beauty lifts the spirits. So I had a bouquet from the Lord and one from Joel and his siblings. I also showed Joel the tall buildings across the street, the new children's hospital. Sometimes helicopters landed on top of it. It was a trauma hospital. He had a suggestion. While you're lying here, you can pray for those children, he said. Why hadn't I thought of that? Of course. Those little children flown in on helicopters must be frightened by their own detours, especially if their parents are not with them. Their health situations are delicate. I began to send prayers upward for them. Then as I listened to Highlands pastor Chris Hodges online tell his flock that heaven and hell are realities, I began to pray more for the eternal destinies of the UAB patients. Allison had attended Highland regularly during the years she lived in the Birmingham area. She had joined some of the small groups such as Camping, Girls with Guitars, and Hispanic Children's Outreach. At the time, the church was using the auditorium of Mountain Brook High School, the same school Natalie Holloway had attended before her famous disappearance in Aruba on her senior trip. When Allison helped lead a mission team with teenagers, she found that some of them knew Natalie and hoped the mystery would be solved by the time the trip ended. Sadly, it is still unsolved. Allison had heard Pastor Chris tell the story behind planting the church. He was in Alabama from out of state on personal business but had been praying about being a senior pastor somewhere. As he sat in a hilltop coffee shop overlooking the Cahaba Valley, teeming with young life, he felt God was saying to him, "Here is your congregation." Businesses along Highway 280 through the Cahaba Valley had mushroomed as the area experienced explosive growth. Chris came to town with his dream team of about 35 people. One day they all stood on the stage of the school auditorium, and Chris encouraged them to see, by faith, people who would one day fill the seats there. He compared it to the time God took Abraham outside and gave him an object lesson in faith and instructed him to look at the stars and believe that they represented the number of his future descendants. Chris and the dream team prayed, worked, and waited. The rest is exciting church history. See Chris's video on the church website. The Highlands and our laptops kept us from getting depressed on the stroke hall and in the rehab center. Joel and his dad also had some quality time together. They discovered an excellent food court on the second floor. It had one business with a French name that Alan loved because it offered soup. They enjoyed some Mediterranean dishes together as well. I wished I could have joined them, and apparently Alan wished the same because he made it a point to take me to a Mediterranean restaurant on our first date back in North Carolina. Those 2 weeks in rehab were better than the previous two, but the schedule was regimented. Breakfast was early, followed by 8:30 therapy in the room or in the gym. I really just wanted to sleep, but I knew I had to do the work to see the success. There was a pleasant doctor who directed my program. He had 2 young interns helping him. One of them removed the staples and stitches from my head, good riddance to them. I got to write a glowing evaluation for one of the interns since it was his last week. I had been a teacher intern once and knew the thrill of finishing a long program. I teased him one day in the hall and said I was going down to enter the Miss America contest. He responded, "I think you'd win." It was in rehab that I finally convinced the nursing staff that I was not diabetic and they could discontinue those daily finger pricks before meals. Someone noted that I had been on steroids near the beginning of my hospitalization, and they probably made me appear to be diabetic. In retrospect, I'm glad I experienced the pricks so I can relate to others who have to endure them as a way of life. Each time I braced for the prick, I thought of one of my special diabetic friends in Alabama. The OT focused on hygiene and grooming and strengthening my weak muscles somewhat. The PT put me on a stationary bike or arm strengthening device. In the gym, I saw several others who were trying to regain what they had lost through strokes or accidents. There was one patient in particular who inspired me. The indentation on her head spoke of trauma. She had been there since June. Alan got to know her husband and was inspired by him. He and his children had been sleeping on the hospital floor to be near his wife. Alan told them about the Baptist apartments, but they preferred to be nearby. They were with her in her workout sessions. Her motor skills were beyond mine, but her speech was poor. She had been involved in a collision with a semi-truck. The impact had broken her skull, but that saved her life, they were told, because it relieved pressure on the head. One day, I saw her get up and walk across the room without the aid of anyone or anything. Wow, I wanted that. I had to use a walker or a wheelchair. When I told my therapist that I really wanted to walk again, they began to make it happen. First, I had to stand up by myself. With my weak legs and drooping blood pressure, that was hard. The blood pressure dropped sometimes as much as 10 points each between lying, sitting, and standing. Standing upright made me woozy and lightheaded. Sometimes I just had to sit back down and drink water. But eventually, I walked 35 feet with a walker. Then, over 60. I was on my way. My PT was always patient with me, but she never let me cop out on the exercises and just go upstairs to my bed. She constantly gave me encouraging little cheerleading phrases. Alan was on hand to learn everything the therapists were teaching me, since he would be my caregiver once we got back to our forsaken North Carolina home. We both grew to love and appreciate the two ladies who put me on the road to wellness. The PT had a doctorate in physical therapy, so she was a PTD. She said people sometimes say that stands for personal torture director because the therapy seems like torture at the time. As time drew near for my release from Spain rehab, I wrote my PT a special, personalized poem. Thank you for studying so hard, for choosing PT, for being so patient with brain-injured me, for opening my future. We owe you big time, just as Helen Keller owed Anne Sullivan. I can teach Spanish, English, math, maybe rhyme, but I couldn't teach myself to walk again. I came here helpless and dependent as a baby. You restored part of my dignity. My husband and I wish you and yours every happiness ahead. Eat your fruit, use your sunscreen, and look to him who loves you more than any mortal ever did. My OT really understood that a woman wants to look her best even in rehab. She assisted me in washing the little bit of hair I had left. She helped me maneuver the wheelchair from the bed to the vanity mirror across the room so that I could apply some eyeliner. Alan had brought my luggage up to the room. It was still packed from vacation with my bathroom kit. Here I got to wear my own clothes again. I had not packed a lot of clothes before leaving home, just enough for a 5-day vacation. Alan took care of all our laundry all month at the hospital or at his Baptist apartment. We were so thankful for a love offering our church home group gave us to defray our expenses. It almost paid for our apartment rental. My OT shared a little about her parents' journey into faith. They were immigrants who left comfortable positions in their country to come to America. One time, her mom returned to their former country for about 6 weeks. She returned a Christian, and the family went to church after that. She was in my room one day when Lolly dropped in to visit. She even told Lolly about her family. Lolly and Tom Whitehead were in Birmingham for his annual checkup at the Veterans Hospital. She had noticed on Facebook that I was in Spain rehab. Otherwise, she would not have known. Lolly and I were once joint leaders of a women's ministry at our home church in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. She often did a practical lesson and someone else did a spiritual lesson. I had no idea she would be coming to see me. I was so excited and so glad I had learned to brush my teeth again because I couldn't stop smiling. It is always an honor for an older person if a younger generation person takes time to come by. One afternoon, one of my grandnieces came by to see me. She was just beginning her nursing career in a Birmingham hospital. Alan and I got excited when we found out that she had been attending Highlands in Birmingham and had also attended the Tuscaloosa branch while she was in nursing school there. Another visitor at rehab was my old college friend and former roommate, Barbara Smith Bray. She was on her way back to Mobile in South Alabama after a wonderful weekend with her own siblings and 50th high school reunion at our rival school, Faulkville High School, in the same county as Eva. She told me that my life would not end until God was finished with me. We had connected through emails. I was pleased that UAB seemed to be on the beaten path between North and South Alabama and between the Birmingham airport and important locations. It's just off Interstate 2059. One day, Diane's husband also had an appointment in Birmingham, and he and Diane were able to stop by. He encouraged Alan regarding his health issues, having improved himself. Ronnie and Diane's friendship to us have been a gift over the years. I can see why Jesus makes visiting the sick a priority. Matthew 25:36. His tremendous compassion goes out to those in sick beds. The boost I felt was healing to me. I just had to be careful not to tire myself. I could also appreciate Paul's remark after being comforted by the coming of Titus in 2 Corinthians 7:6. Even though Paul was so tough spiritually, he still benefited from positive human contact. When guests and staff workers were not in the room, Alan and I had old-fashioned time to talk to each other. Where had that skill been in storage? It was like reconnecting with my own husband. Absolutely wonderful. My committee of doctors and therapists met and decided that I could be released on August 14th. The brain surgery, aneurysm clipping, had taken place July 17th. It was a different summer. My summer clothes had hung in the closet without me. Sometimes I had wondered if peaches were in season. The hospital food was delicious, but we could only order apples, grapes, oranges, and bananas. I was in Alabama, but was not experiencing those Chilton County peaches, a real hardship tour. One Sunday near the end of my tenure at Spain Rehab, I finally had an opportunity to play the piano in the family room. Unlike little Sammy the parakeet, I was determined not to lose my song. Could I still play the piano? I was not allowed to go alone and had to wait until Alan was free to accompany me. I had waited all day for that moment. My heart sank as I saw 5 young females enter just before me. They might be wanting to watch TV. But they were simply relaxing when I entered, so I asked them if it would be okay for me to play softly. I began playing Blessed Assurance. Some of the females came near to me to listen. Here was a lady, me, with a partially shaved head with ugly scars on the back of her head, playing Blessed Assurance. I thank God joined us in that room. One of the ladies was a youthful-looking mother whose 20-something son had just been admitted with a head injury and subsequent strokes from an accident. Another lady in the group was his young grandmother. 2 were sisters and 1 a girlfriend. Soon we all felt a kinship with each other and had an impromptu prayer meeting. The grandmother was seeking a spiritual church without drama. I led in prayer and claimed that God would lead her to just the right church. I also prayed for the young man so loved by all these ladies to get out of these woods and get well. All therapy ceases on Sundays at Spain, so his treatment was scheduled to begin the following day. Although I watched for them, I never saw his family again. On the last day at rehab, I left some thank you notes for the staff. Also, I finally got some time alone with one of my favorite techies. We will call her Valerie. I remember starting a conversation with her one day by having a contest on which of us was poor as a child. I asked her, "Did your family have an indoor bathroom in your house growing up?" She answered, "We didn't have a house." She won. She and her mom were homeless. But Valerie had broken the poverty cycle by becoming a nursing assistant, was going on to school, and had purchased a house. I wanted to be sure she was a Christian. As I shared the gospel with her and used the hand illustrations, she listened carefully. But at the end, she said she had already prayed that prayer of commitment at her Highland small group for sewing. She wanted me to draw the hand out with the verses for each finger so that she could remember it. That was terrific. Now I could be dismissed with peace. Valerie was ready for heaven. The hand was a technique that a friend used to memorize the evangelism explosion outline. He had a learning disability, but the left hand made it easy for him and for me to remember the points. 1. It starts with a thumb, representing the hitchhiker who needs a free ride because he can't repay anything. Heaven is a free gift. It can't be earned or deserved or repaid. Romans 6:23 and Ephesians 2:8 through 9. 2. The finger pointed sticking out horizontally makes the shape of a gun, representing bad guys. We are all bad guys. Romans 3:23. The middle finger held up with others, representing God. No comparison. No one can attain his perfection. He is both loving and just. 4. The ring finger. The covenant finger represents Jesus, who is next to God. Isaiah 53. He was the infinite God-man who died to pay the penalty for our sin, rose from the dead, and now offers us heaven as a free gift. 5. The pinky. The smallest finger represents faith. Mustard seed, the smallest of all seeds, is a symbol of faith. Matthew 13:31 through 32. If you had faith the size of a mustard seed, it's not mental assent or temporary faith, but a faith that transfers trust from oneself to Christ alone for qualification to enter heaven. After I jotted all this down for Valerie on a white envelope, I was ready to say goodbye to the nurses' station, level 3. The staff calls the day of discharge our Independence Day and gives the person exiting a balloon. I was looking forward to driving away from the hospital parking lot. I hope I had left behind a good testimony. That chapter was over.